So let's talk a bit about strength standards for a mogger physique. And strength standards, for those who don't know, are basically quantifiable strength goals in certain exercises. The most common ones are a 2-plate bench press, right? A 3-plate squat, a 4-plate deadlift, right? Those are very powerlifting centric strength standards. But specifically for hypertrophy and also for gym selling, right? Building a physique for the purpose of looks maxing, strength standards give a quantifiable goal for hypertrophy, and the progressive overload towards that strength goal basically indicates that we are building muscle and then we are adding contractile proteins, right? Because your strength in an exercise is basically a function of two things: the neurological adaptations you have in that exercise and the contractile proteins, the muscle mass you have in the relevant muscle groups. So let's say I've been bench pressing. Well, I'm not saying you should bench press. This is just an example. Let's say I've been bench pressing for 3 to 4 weeks and I've been more or less neurologically adapted to the bench press. That means that every rep I gain, every 5 pound jump in that exercise will have to mainly come from me adding more muscle mass, more contractile proteins in my chest, shoulders, and triceps. So that's why this is that's why this is so useful, because I wouldn't be able to bench press 100 kilos if I don't have the contractile proteins. So if I can progressively overload to 100 kilos, then it would be impossible for me to not have the muscle. So it's a way of ensuring that you actually build muscle instead of just doing bullshit exercises for high reps like the Mike Israel stuff. But yeah, let's quickly talk about the traditional strength standards versus the BP fitness strength standards, if you want to call it that. So when it comes to the traditional strength standards, they're really powerlifting centric, right? Especially, it's like not as bad now, but in the past, all the gym culture in general has been very powerlifting centric, and it's been focused on the squat, bench, and deadlift, and maybe sometimes the overhead press. And there's a pro to this, but many cons to this. So the pro to the traditional strength standards of squat, bench, and deadlift that you might see in most gyms is that it's easy to standardize, right? You're just using a barbell, it's accessible everywhere, and it's regulated by the sport of powerlifting. Now, the cons, there's a lot of cons, is that firstly, it's not completely optimal for hypertrophy, right? Barbells itself are not bad for hypertrophy, but they're just subpar to something like a Smith machine or just machines in general, right? And other isolation exercises. But worst part, right? The worst part about traditional strength standards of squat, bench, and deadlift is that they are very conducive to a gym cell physique, right? Because think about it, when you focus on the squat, bench, and deadlift, 2/3 of your exercises are going to be focused on your lower body. That's why a lot of these powerlifting type physiques, they're all very lower body dominant. And that's basically the opposite of what you want, because I talked about training legs and skipping legs a lot in my other videos, but basically you want your body to be more upper body dominant because it's more in line with your male sexual dimorphism, right? Males, we have more mass proportionally on our upper body, whereas females have more mass proportionally on their lower body. So if you want to build this masculine dimorphic physique, then your physique should be more upper body dominant. Whereas if you have a more lower body physique, then it's actually more of a feminine physique. And also, if you look at the squat, bench, and deadlift, it basically creates the exact opposite of what is a aesthetic physique, right? If you focus on the squat, bench, and deadlift, you'll get big quads, as seen here, big glutes. You'll get an overdeveloped lower chest from benching with an aggressive arch, and triceps. Quads, glutes, lower chest. That basically creates the appearance of saggy chest and wide hips, which is literally the opposite of what you want in your physique. And if you look at all the muscle groups that get underdeveloped through the squat, bench, and deadlift, right? When you focus on the squat, bench, and deadlift, you underdevelop the upper chest, the lats, the side delts, the biceps, and even a bit of the hamstrings and possibly abs. So all of the most important muscles for your physique, right? Literally the lats, side delts, upper chest, and biceps, they all get underdeveloped when you focus on chasing the squat, bench, and deadlift. And you can see, right, these are photos from Starting Strength where they have some pretty abysmal physiques. Same here, and Will Tennyson, and also I think this is Johnny Candido, who's a powerlifter as well. So that's why you shouldn't be chasing these traditional strength standards at all, right? Especially the squat and deadlift, right? There's literally no point for you to be chasing the squat and deadlift, and it'll basically just make you a ugly fat gym cell. Now let's talk about the new strength standards, right? The science-based hypertrophy strength standards and the one that I'm going to give you. So pros is, instead of just sticking to squat, bench, and deadlift and confined by the sport of powerlifting, which again, right, it used to be a lot worse in the past, but I think it's a lot better now. But in general, the gym culture is still heavily influenced by powerlifting, and people still care about squatting and deadlifting, right? But when you do these science-based hypertrophy strength standards, you can actually pick isolation machine exercises that focus on the most important muscle groups, right? The specific muscle groups that literally get underdeveloped from the squat, bench, and deadlift, like the upper chest, the biceps, the lats, the abs, and the shoulders, right? So you can actually get a really high appeal physique. And also you can pick from way more exercises like I talked about. You can have machines, you can have Smith machines, you can have cables, and you can pick criterias that fit optimal hypertrophy exercises. Now, the cons of this, right, the minor con is that it's much harder to standardize, right? That's a con when it comes to strength standards, right? Because someone can be doing a prime fitness chest press, whereas someone else can be doing a Nautilus Impact pin loaded chest press, whereas someone can be doing a bench press on a Smith machine, whereas someone else can be doing a hoist crunch fitness chest press. So it's much harder to standardize because one machine, 50 pounds on one machine might feel like 30 pounds on another machine, and it's just a lot harder to work around. So I'm going to talk a bit about that as well, but I'm going to give you two levels of strength standards. So there's going to be level 1, which is basically the top 10% of strength, and this is like the standard 1 to 1.5 years of training that you should strength standards that you should get within 1 to 1.5 years of training. And that's going to be the 2-plate bench press, the 3-plate squat, and the 4-plate deadlift, right? This is the common goal that you see a lot of these guys aim for. And then there's the level 2 strength standards, which come from 3 to 5 years of training and basically put you in the top 1% of strength. And that's going to be a 3-plate bench press, 4-plate squat, and a 5-plate deadlift. And the strength standards I'm going to give you in this video are basically going to fall into level 2, right? 3 to 5 years of training. So that's what you should expect. And if you can get to this level, right, in these exercises, you can actually kind of see this already, right? Let's say you can get to top 1% in terms of the preacher curl, then that means you're going to have some really mogger biceps. If you can get into top 1% of an upper pec press, which I'll talk about as well, then you're going to get a really good upper chest. So again, right, these are going to take around 3 to 5 years of training to get there, depending on your current level of training, right? 3 to 5 years total. But they're basically going to guarantee that you have a really developed muscle corresponding to that specific exercise. And to counter the problem of being hard to standardize, I'm going to be focusing on more common machines like the Smith machine, semi machines like preacher bench and T-bar rows. And you'll also see that I'm not going to cover every single muscle group in the entire body. Instead, I'm just going to cover the most important muscle groups that actually contribute to your aesthetics the most, which means that there's not going to be a lot of leg exercises in this list. So I'll just show it to you right now, right? It's going to be preacher curls for 50 kilograms for 5 reps. That's for your biceps. T-bar row for 5, maybe 6 plates for 5 reps. Wide grip weighted pull-ups for 40 kilos for 5 reps. Although depending on your body weight, you might have to adjust more or less, right? If you're a higher body weight, then it's going to lean more towards 30. And if you're lower body weight, it might even go 45 to 50. Decline sit-ups, 20 to 30 kilograms for 5 reps. And again, this depends on the max incline because some sit-up benches can be super, okay, not that steep, can be super steep, whereas other benches can be not so steep, and the sit-ups are going to be a lot easier to do. And that's going to give you the abs. Reverse grip Smith machine bench press, 125 kilograms for 5 reps. That's going to be one of the best and most accessible upper pec exercises, because if you imagine a reverse grip Smith machine bench press, it's basically the same motion as a low to high cable fly, and it's going to focus on shoulder flexion, and it actually works the upper chest more than most incline presses. Right, again, Smith machine seated shoulder press, 100 kilos for 5 reps. And as a bonus, you can also try and get a 30 to 40 kilogram neck curl and try to not cheat too much when you do it. So when you do these things, right, I'm just going to pull this up here. When you do these things, you're basically going to develop all of the most important areas that you need, right? Instead of focusing on the squat, bench, and deadlift, which will literally get you a saggy lower chest and wide hips and wide quads, these exercises, and if you actually train for 3 to 5 years and get strong enough to hit these standards, you're gonna have a really modern physique, right? Focus on preacher curls, and I'll give you the biceps and a bit of the forearms. T-bar rows for the traps and upper back. Wide grip pull-ups for the lats. Decline sit-up for the abs, which is super important, right? Because most people don't actually do any direct ab training, even though direct ab training is one of the most important exercises because it'll make your abs look more visible at higher body fat percentages and just make them look even better when you get lean. So decline sit-up for the abs, reverse grip Smith machine bench press so you can actually have a full upper chest, Smith machine seated shoulder press so you can have the front and side delt, and neck curls for the neck. Again, right? Forget about 3-plate bench, 4-plate squat, 5-plate deadlift. You're not a powerlifter. We're not trying to be powerlifters. We're trying to use the gym specifically as one of the most powerful soft maxes in our toolbox, right? Again, you should still be doing other soft maxes and other looks maxes, but just know that the gym is actually one of the most powerful looks maxes and it can give you the most substantial magnitude in difference, right? In terms of how the transformation that you make. So we're not trying to be powerlifters and focus on getting a 4-plate squat. Honestly, forget squat and deadlift, right? Forget 4-plate squat, 5-plate deadlift. Forget all of that. Focus on these: preacher curl, T-bar rows, weighted pull-ups, decline sit-up, Smith machine reverse grip bench press, right? If you're gonna do bench press, I would highly recommend you use the reverse grip because it's gonna train your upper chest way more than any pronated grip bench press. So from now on, when you do bench press, just default to the reverse grip. That's how you get a really fucking amazing upper chest, shoulder press, and neck curl, right? Focus on these. You can add in a bit of leg exercises if you want, but really when it comes to aesthetics, legs are gonna be really low in terms of priority, unless you have like really skinny legs. And if you want to progress every session, right, this is how I want you to progress every session, because you should be able to progress every session until you're like late intermediate to advanced. And the way you do that is don't try and progress on every exercise every session, right? That's going to be completely unrealistic. But the mentality that you should have is you want to add at least 1 rep or 2.5 kilos, which is 5 pounds, to at least one exercise every session. So you don't have to progress on every exercise every session. That's not what progress every session means. You just have to have at least one exercise where you increase the weight or you increase the reps. And if you can do that, if you have at least one exercise each session that you increase the weights or reps, then that means you're progressing and that means you're moving towards the strength standards. So, let's say you start your workout with a reverse grip Smith machine bench press, and last time you did 100 kilos for 5 reps, and this time you do 100 kilos and you try 6 reps, but you fail and you're still at 5 reps, that's fine. Move on to the next exercise, right? You do preacher curl. Last time you did 40 kilos for 3 reps. Now you want to do 40 kilos for 4 reps, but you fail again. So you stay at 3 reps. That's fine. Go to the next exercise. And let's say you do a cable lateral raise. And last time you did 15 kilos for 13 reps. And this time you did 15 kilos for 14 reps. That's the 1 rep increase. If you just have that, if you just have at least one exercise where you go up by 1 rep or 2.5 kilos, then that's a win, right? So that you can call that a successful session, even though in the other exercises you stay at the same reps and weight. And that's the mentality that you should have. And I would highly recommend you do 3 times a week frequency on a full body split. And when I mean full body split, it's basically just a upper body dominant full body split 3 times a week. So you're basically having, right, 3 upper body days. I'll just do 3 upper body days. Let's say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 upper body days with a bit of legs at the end. So you have 3 upper body sessions, low volume, 1 to 2 sets, and then you have a little bit of leg exercises at the end if you want. That's how I would suggest you structure this. You want to be upper body dominant as a whole. And if you found that helpful, you can go check out the BP Fitness Physique System, where I talk about how to use natural gym selling as one of the most powerful looks maxes. I talk about illusion strategies like clothing and hairstyle based on your physique. I talk about fraud maxing strategies like the best frame frauding methods to add 2 inches to your bideltoid, height frauding methods to add 2 inches to your height, other frauding methods, how to assess your bone structure and build your physique off of your bone structure, how to build muscle without aging or stressing yourself. So maybe if you're a GOAT style, you can go check that out. Diet guides for animal-based, carnivore, raw primal diet, how to use carbs effectively to maximize motor unit recruitment, and also science-based training so that once you determine the best physique for your body structure, you can get there as fast as possible and speed run your physique through the most meta optimal science-based training splits. And of course, there's also the Discord community as well, where you have private forums, text channels, voice channels, basically like a complete forum system inside the BP Fitness Discord server as well. So if you're interested in that, you can go check that out, link in the description, and I'll see you in the next video.